Are you sure you want to clean our office? Look at this guy. Sandra Williams, HR manager at the prestigious consulting firm Manhattan Elite. High enough for Miguel to hear while waiting on the elegant lobby. The company drove interviews for a night caretaker, and 34-year-old Miguel Santos was the last candidate of the day. His calloused hands of years working in different jobs contrasted with the sophisticated marble and office glass atmosphere on the 40th floor. Mr. Richard Thompson, the executive director known for his arrogance, gave an impatient look at the Rolex clock. Let's finish this soon. Give him the basic test and let's go. Miguel never imagined that he would come so far in his life. Filipino immigrant who arrived in the United States with only one suitcase and the dream of a better life. He had worked in restaurants, construction, and offices cleaning for years. His English, though fluent, still carried the accent that some Americans seem to despise automatically. An assistant approached a clipboard. "Do you know how to read in English?" he asked condescendingly, as if talking to a child. "You need to sign here and start at midnight tomorrow." A murmur of muffled laughs traveled the staff who remained in the office. That was clearly an embarrassing situation. They were having fun with Miguel's obvious discomfort. "I hope you know how to operate a vacuum cleaner," commented a junior analyst, causing more discreet laughs. "It's very different from the equipment you use there in the Philippines." Miguel nodded silently, signing the papers with a surprisingly elegant handwriting. His movements were accurate, calculated, none of that nervousness that would be expected from someone in their position. "Any problem?" Sandra asked, arising a perfectly designed eyebrow when she noticed that Miguel remained too calm for someone being publicly humiliated. "No problem," said Miguel, his quiet voice echoing the lobby. "I'll be here tomorrow." While gathering the documents, Miguel allowed his eyes to quickly travel the environment. Note the security cameras, the location of the main offices, the names on the doors, details that any ordinary caretaker would completely ignore. In the elevator, while descending the 40 floors, Miguel allowed an almost imperceptible smile. If these people knew that the simple Filipino garbage had a Harvard Business Administration PhD and had sold its startup for $50 million just 2 years earlier, perhaps they would treat the situation quite differently. But they did not know that their fortune had mysteriously disappeared after a guaranteed investment recommended by none other than Richard Thompson, who at the time presented himself as a mentor of young entrepreneurs. They also did not know that Miguel had spent the last 8 months meticulously investigating each movement of Manhattan Elite, discovering a corruption network that went far beyond simple mismanagement. While the elevator reached the ground floor, Miguel discreetly touched the digital recorder hidden in his pocket. The first evidence was collected. Today's humiliations would only be the beginning of a much more elaborate operation. There, in the face of all the eyes of contempt, he remained firm as one who holds too powerful secret to be revealed before the right time. If this story of prejudice and overcoming has touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of humiliation would become the catalyst of a revenge that would flick the foundations of one of Manhattan's most respected companies. In the first 2 weeks as a night caretaker, Miguel observed each movement of Manhattan Elite with the accuracy of a veteran researcher. Its shifts always started at 11 p.m., when only security guards and some workaholics remained in the building. The routine of humiliation was relentless. Sandra Williams made a point of appearing by chance during her rounds, always accompanied by other managers commenting high on the importance of maintaining standards while pointing to corners that didn't even need cleaning. "Make sure this Philippine understands that here we have rigid protocols," she told the security supervisor, as if Miguel were deaf. "People like him need to know that they are being observed." Richard Thompson was even worse. One night, he purposely poured coffee in a $15,000 rug just to watch Miguel cleaning his knees while he answered telephone calls on promising acquisitions in Southeast Asia. "It's comforting to know that some immigrants still know their place," said Thompson on the phone, high enough for Miguel to hear. "Unlike these Filipino entrepreneurs who think they can compete with us." Miguel smiled internally. If Thompson knew he was talking about himself 2 years ago, when he was a CEO of TechFlow Solutions. During his breaks, Miguel discreetly searched the computers left linked. He found that Manhattan Elite was not just a consultancy, but the center of a complex money laundering operation that diverted funds from promising startups, just as it had happened to him. The security cameras had blind points that Miguel had mapped in the first week. As he appeared rubbing the floor, he photographed documents left on the tables, memorizing typed passwords and collecting evidence systematically. Thompson's emails revealed an international network that had been operating for at least 5 years. Young entrepreneurs received undeniable investment offers, transferred their companies to safe funds, and then found that their businesses had been dismantled and sold in parts. A folder called Asian Targets 2022-2023 contained 20 names. The first on the list was Miguel Santos, TechFlow Solutions, completed. That night, while cleaning Thompson's office, Miguel discreetly planted a keylogger on the main computer. Each password, each access, each document would be automatically copied to a server that it had configured months before. The humiliations intensified when other employees realized that Miguel did not react. An analyst named Derek began to leave garbage purposefully on the floor, just to see Miguel bend and clean as he laughed with his colleagues. "I bet this Philippine doesn't even know how to speak English right," said Derek on a Thursday, playing wrinkled role in the corridor. "Maybe we should speak slower to understand." Miguel kept sweeping, but he recorded each word on his hidden cell phone. The most revealing moment came on Friday, when Thompson and Sandra celebrated another successful acquisition with French champagne in the main office. 50 million Chang family in Hong Kong, toasted Thompson. "They don't even know that their biotechnology company has already been dismantled and resold for 3 different competitors," Sandra laughed. "And the best thing is that we use their own money to finance the operation. Great as always, Richard." Miguel, hidden behind the ajar door, recorded every word. It was then that he realized something crucial. They were not just greedy criminals. There was a specific pattern. All targets were Asian entrepreneurs or successful Latinos. Manhattan Elite was systematically destroying ethnic competitors to keep the club exclusively Anglo-Saxon. Thompson went so far as to pour out water at Miguel's uniform on a Monday, forcing him to work wet throughout the morning while commenting on hygiene patterns with important visitors. The following Monday, Miguel came to work with a completely defined plan. It wouldn't just be about recovering your money, it would be about exposing the entire network and protecting future victims. While Thompson passed him in the hallway, purposely stepping on his dirty water bucket, Miguel kept his head down as usual. But this time his eyes shone with a determination that would make anyone smart feel a shiver on his spine. What those privileged people did not know was that every act of contempt was feeding a revenge machine that operated in the shadows, collecting evidence that would soon transform their arrogant smiles into expressions of absolute terror when they discovered who had actually chosen as a target. During the 3rd month working at Manhattan Elite, Miguel had already collected enough evidence to destroy the entire operation, but he wanted more than just justice. He wanted complete and irreversible revenge. It was then that he made contact with Marcus Chen, a former FBI enclosure specializing in financial crimes who had lost his job for denouncing internal corruption. Marcus lived discreetly in Chinatown offering consulting services for corporate fraud victims. $50 million. Marcus muttered as he reviewed the documents Miguel had collected. "They not only stole your money, have created an entire system to steal from dozens of entrepreneurs like you." Miguel nodded. "But I want something more elaborate than just surrendering them to the FBI. I want them to feel exactly what their victims felt." Marcus smiled for the first time since they met. "I have a better idea. What if we use their own methods against them?" Meanwhile, at Manhattan Elite, the humiliations intensified dangerously. Thompson began to bring important customers during Miguel's shift, specifically to Dem Truth, how we keep our company organized with employees who know their place. A particularly cruel night, Thompson deliberately poured a $1,000 red wine bottle on the main office carpet, forcing Miguel to clean his knees as he explained to a Japanese investor about cultural differences between Asian workers. "See," said Thompson, pointing to Miguel. "Some Asians are born to serve, others think they can lead. It's important to know the difference." The Japanese investor seemed uncomfortable, but said nothing. Sandra went so far as to install a camera in the supply cabinet, claiming that she needed to monitor the behavior of employees of certain origins. The camera was clearly directed to humiliate Miguel during his breaks. But it was during one of these breaks that Miguel discovered something that completely changed the game. Hidden behind old folders in the closet, found a second set of accounting books, the real records of Manhattan Elite. The company was not just stealing startups. They were washing money to international cartels, using stolen companies as a facade. The total value of the operation was not millions, were billions. Miguel photographed each page with high-resolution equipment Marcus had provided. Each document was a nuclear bomb waiting to explode. The most shocking discovery was in the last folder, correspondence with corrupt agents of immigration. Thompson was selling information about immigrant entrepreneurs to facilitate deportations after theft of their companies. 3 names on the list of scheduled deportations made the blood of Miguel gelar: his sister Maria, his cousin Elena, and his cousin David. All successful entrepreneurs who had received investment offers from Manhattan Elite in the last 6 months. "You need to see this," said Miguel on the phone to Marcus the same night. It's no longer just about financial theft. It's business genocide against our community. Marcus was silent for a moment. In that case, we'll have to play heavier. Are you ready for that? More than ready, Miguel answered, watching Thompson's bright office on the window upstairs. The following week, Miguel began to implement the second phase of the plan. During his night rounds, he discreetly installed listening devices in 3 main offices, including the conference room where Thompson held his most confidential meetings. The recordings revealed even more disturbing details. Thompson was not just stealing companies, he was selling successful entrepreneurs' lists for international criminal networks that organized kidnappings and extortion. The Santos family Filipino would be a perfect target, heard Miguel in a Thompson recording talking to unidentified contact. 50 million recently liquidated, big family in the Philippines. It would pay anything to protect them. Miguel felt a fury that he had not experienced for years. They were not just stealing money, they were putting lives at risk. The next morning, while Miguel cleaned the same corridor he had cleaned for months, his posture was different. His movements were more accurate, his eyes alert. He was no longer just a man collecting evidence, he was a predator, waiting for the exact moment to attack. Thompson passed him as always, purposely stepping on his bucket of water. "I hope you understand your place here," he said with disdain. "Some immigrants think they can aspire more than they deserve." Miguel smiled discreetly. "I understand perfectly, Mr. Thompson." The plan was complete. The pieces were positioned, and in exactly 72 hours during the annual meeting with international investors, Manhattan elite would discover that they had systematically humiliated and underestimated the man who would become the architect of their total destruction, using the same weapons of prejudice and arrogance that they had wielded against their victims for years. The night of the Manhattan Elite annual investor meeting had arrived. The 40th floor main hall was full of international billionaires, all curious to know the exclusive opportunities that Thompson had promised for months. Miguel arrived on time at 10 p.m. for his cleaning routine, but this time he carried something special, a pen drive containing 3 years of evidence that would destroy not only Thompson, but the whole criminal network. Marcus Chen was strategically positioned on the lobby as a security consultant, monitoring each movement through the cameras they had hacked weeks earlier. "Investors," Thompson began in the microphone, elegant in his Italian tuxedo. "Today I will present opportunities that will yield returns of 300% in just 18 months. In the plain web, Miguel discreetly cleaned the windows, invisible as always. But this time, each movement was calculated. Thompson clicked on the first slide of his presentation. Instead of the expected projection on promising Asian acquisitions, the giant screen displayed something completely different. Thompson photos receiving bags of money from well-known cartel bosses. "What the hell?" muttered Thompson, frantically clicking on the remote control. The next slide showed detailed emails about planned deportations, including specific entrepreneurs' names that would be eliminated from the competition after their companies stolen. The audience began to murmur nervously. The Japanese investor who had witnessed Miguel's humiliations rose immediately. "Mr. Thompson, I need an explanation for that." "It's a misunderstanding," shouted Thompson, sweating visibly. "Someone hacked our system." But the slides continued automatically. Now there were Thompson's crystalline audio recordings discussing how to physically eliminate entrepreneurs who refused to deliver their companies. Sandra Williams, who had been running to hear the commotion, was paralyzed to see her own voice being reproduced. The best part is that when they are deported or killed, no one asks where the money ended. The next slide revealed bank documents showing millionaire transfers to accounts in tax havens, all signed by Thompson and Sandra. The numbers were astronomical, billions of dollars stolen over 5 years. A video recording started playing automatically. It was Thompson in his office a week earlier, talking on the phone. Filipino Santos was easier than expected. 50 million settled in 6 months. Now let's go after his family. This presentation is being transmitted simultaneously to the FBI, Interpol, and all major news agencies, announced a voice through the sound system. It was then that Miguel stopped cleaning the windows and walked calmly to the stage. All the attention turned to the simple Filipino janitor that had been treated for months as garbage. "Ladies investors," Miguel said to the microphone, his now firm and authoritarian voice. "My name is Miguel Santos. I'm PhD in business by Harvard and former TechFlow Solutions." The silence in the hall was a sepulchral. "For 3 months I worked as a caretaker in this company to collect evidence that you were being deceived by a criminal organization that steals startups, washing money to cartels and plans murders." Thompson tried to run towards the exit, but Marcus Chen was there, blocking the way with an FBI team. "Every penny you invested was used to finance forced deportations, extortions, and homicides," continued Miguel. The promising companies that Thompson offered to you were stolen from immigrant entrepreneurs like me. The Japanese investor approached Thompson with a cold expression. Did you make me an accomplice of crimes against humanity? Sandra Williams collapsed in tears as she realized that her career and freedom was over. The ignorant Philippine that she had humiliated every day had been smarter than anyone in that room. In addition, continued Miguel, all your investments will be confiscated as evidence. You haven't lost money, it was involuntary accomplices of business genocide. Thompson, tremendous with anger and despair, shouted, "You were just a janitor! That's impossible!" Miguel smiled for the first time in months. "No, Mr. Thompson. I was a Philippine businessman that you underestimated because you saw only my origin, not my ability." The next slide revealed something even more devastating. Contracts signed for murders of entrepreneurs who refused to deliver their companies. 3 had already been executed. While Thompson was handcuffed, he looked at Miguel with hatred and despair. How did you get it?" "Very simple," Miguel answered calmly. "You gave me full access to the building for 3 months. I just used your arrogance against yourself." The last slide showed a list of 847 entrepreneurs who would be targets over the next 2 years. The operation was much larger than anyone could imagine, but there was still a final revelation waiting for all present, something Miguel had discovered only the night before, and would transform that exposure of a simple personal revenge into something that would forever redefine the laws of entrepreneurial immigrants in the United States. 6 months after the fall of Manhattan elite, Miguel Santos was sitting on his new office on the 50th floor of a skyscraper in downtown Manhattan. Through the panoramic windows, he could see the building where he had worked as a caretaker, now sealed by the FBI and in the process of demo lesson. The Santos Foundation for Immigrant Entrepreneurs had become the largest support organization for U.S. immigrant entrepreneurs. With $2.8 billion recovered from criminal operation, Miguel created a fund that protected startups from fraudulent schemes and offered free legal support. Marcus Chen, now Foundation's security director, entered the office with a report. 547 entrepreneurs protected this year, he announced with pride, and Thompson was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Sandra Williams had lost everything. Her home was confiscated, her assets auctioned to compensate the victims, and she now lived in a rented apartment, working as an attendant at a call center. The irony was that his supervisor was Philippine. The case became a legal framework. The Santos Act was approved by Congress, creating specific federal protections for immigrant entrepreneurs and establishing severe penalties for systematic discrimination in the corporate world. On a Tuesday morning, Miguel received an unexpected visit. Derek, the former analyst who used to throw trash to the floor to humiliate him, was on the lobby asking to talk to him. "Mr. Santos," said Derek, visibly nervous, I wanted to apologize. I didn't know who you were, but that doesn't justify." Miguel interrupted him kindly. "Derek, are you looking for a job?" "Yes, sir. After the company closed, no one wants to hire someone who worked there." Miguel smiled. "We have a place in community relations. The work involves visiting newly arrived immigrants and explaining their rights. Interested?" Derek could not contain the tears. "Why are you helping me after what I did?" "Because," Miguel answered, "true revenge is not to destroy people. It is to transform them into something better." The foundation had become an international symbol of justice and overcoming. Miguel was regularly invited to speak at the UN, universities, and business conferences. Its history inspired an international law to protect immigrant entrepreneurs. Thompson, in turn, had completely lost sanity in prison. He spent his days muttering on Avengers Philippines and refused to believe he had been defeated by someone he considered inferior. On the first anniversary of the operation, Miguel visited the prison where Thompson was detained. Through armored glass, he said only, "I told you I knew my place. My place was exactly where I am now." Thompson just shook his head, repeating, "Impossible. You were just a janitor." Time magazine appointed Miguel as one of the 100 most influential people of the year. His photo on the cover showed him in the same caretaker uniform who wore for 3 months but now holding an honorary Harvard diploma. In his office, Miguel kept framed the first picture they took from him on the Manhattan elite, smiling humbly as he cleaned the floor. It was a daily reminder where it had begun, and how underestimation can be the greatest weapon of those who are determined to win. Life had given a full return. Miguel had turned 3 months of humiliation into a victory that would protect thousands of people like him. Its history became legend in immigrant communities, the man who cleared the floor to clean the system. In his last public speech of that year, Miguel left a message that would echo for generations. "They saw me sweeping the floor and thought I was cleaning dirt. In fact, I was collecting evidence. The difference between failure and success is not what we do, but why we do it. The real victory was not just to defeat Thompson, it was proving that the origin of a person never determines his destiny. Miguel Santos had transformed fuel prejudice into a revolution that changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of immigrants. Thompson tried to destroy Miguel, but eventually destroyed himself. Miguel has learned that true revenge is not to return the damage suffered. It is to achieve the success that their enemies could never imagine. If this story of overcoming injustice has touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes the person you underestimate today can be exactly who will change your life tomorrow, for the better or worse.